Good morning, everyone. I am Wenslin Quisado, the presenter of Chapter 9, The Practice of Language Policies and Planning in 55 Selected Regions and Countries. So, before we proceed with our discussions, let's have first our objectives. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to first understand the history of language in Europe, Belgium, and Switzerland. Second, you should be able to examine the various linguistic regulations in each nation. But before we tackled about the country under Europe, which is Belgium and Switzerland, let's just first have a quick introductions of Europe country. So Europe is one of the seven continents, making about 2% of Earth's surface. It is the second smallest continent, but the third largest populated, with a total population of 747.8 million inhabitants as of 2001 survey. And also Europe is a continent full of diversity both culturally and linguistically. Traveling between the countries can show you just how broad this diversity and that what makes Europe one of the biggest destinations for tourists, students, and academics, and of course professionals in the world. There are up to 200 different languages spoken on the continent, but we are just going to talk about the language spoken in Belgium and Switzerland and some other parts of the Europe that is being mentioned in chapter 9 for these discussions for today. So Belgium, it is the kingdom. So the kingdom of Belgium lies in northwest Europe and has a population of about 11 million people. It is a founding member of the European Union and hosts the EU's headquarters. So in Belgium, there are three official languages, which is Dutch, French, and German. So Dutch is the official language of the Northern Flemish region, also called Flanders. So mother tongue of about 97% of the populations. So both Dutch and French are official language of the Brussels capital region. So in French-speaking Wallonia, close to the border with the Flemish region, there are four so-called municipalities with language facilities. Cities with legal provisions to protect the language rights of their historic Dutch minorities. And next, we have the language laws and the history. In 1794, Napoleon included Belgium in the French Empire and prohibited the use of Flemish. And in 1815, after his defeat in 1815, the Congress of Vienna proclaimed the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which included Belgium, with a Dutch king, so the Dutch language was imposed to the entire kingdom. So the entire kingdom was forced to speak Dutch, which among other things did lead to the southern states speaking French if they belonged to the upper class or German. So revolt by the Wallons led to the establishment of an independent Belgium in 1830 according to Cara 2007. So particularly among the ruling elite being regarded as the language of reasons and civilizations, French was highly valued especially within the ruling elite. Although the Belgian constitution provided for the freedom of language, in general did not only imply that the government would speak to its constituents in their own tongue or language, but rather it could do so in its own preferred tongue, which was typically French. So French was the language of the upper class, both Flemish and Wallon. Both Flemish and Wallon upper class people spoke French. The majority of Belgians spoke Flemish, Brabantes, or Limburgese as their native tongues. Original Romance languages like Wallons, Picard, Lorraine. At that time, only only 15% of the people in Brussels were francophone, but in the government, municipal services, courts, and official documents, only French was used. So, in the northern parts of the country, this led to resentment. So, the first law on the use of languages was voted on by the Parliament in 1873. So it regulates the use of language in courts in Flanders, but Dutch became the major language, but it was allowed to pronounce oral pleading and penal actions in French, according to Van de la Notte and Godert 2007. So it was permitted in primary educations in 1883 and in courts for oral testimony in 1889. A new law gave it official status equal sti- official status equal to French in 1894. However, French was used in more important functions related to Belgian state. It wasn't until 1930 that Dutch took over as the language of instructions at school at Ghent University. So, Belgium first Dutch-speaking university. The first Belgian-speaking university is called University of Ghent. So in 1921, a linguistic division was introduced, creating a Flemish part with the Dutch language in the north, a Walloon part with the French language in the south, and the Luxembourg part with the both language and bilingual sections in Brussels. Because only French people were divided, it means that the division was asymmetrical. Both language could be used in official functions in the Wallon in the southern region, while either could be used in the Flemish, which is Dutch, or northern region. Apart from that, despite having a Dutch-speaking majority, Brussels became bilingual, caused grievance and tensions. In 1932, Dutch was declared the official language of Flanders and French of Wallonia and German of the German-speaking region. Also, Europe and Saint Vincent regions, while Brussels is surrounded by Flemish territory, was declared bilingual once more. Also, a language census has been illegal in Brussels since 1961 because the new constitution of 1994 confirmed the divisions of the country into four linguistic regions, which is Dutch, French, German, and bilingual. So there are three linguistic communities in which is French, Flemish, and German. So language laws are decreased amount cannot be issued by the German-speaking community. So this was the case until 1960 when 300 Duchess majors refused to take part in the new census and accept a possible new change. Censuses are now only conducted for statistical purposes and have no effect on the boundaries. So, according to Cara, discuss how Belgian language legislation has responded to its linguistic challenges. According to her, conflict linguistic legislation was enacted to ensure that members of the Dutch-speaking and French-speaking communities can use. So it means that in administrations, municipal and regional services, they use their own language. So in Brussels, where the two linguistic groups coexist, a language policy is required to protect citizens' linguistic rights. And next we have the communities and regions have one council each. It means communities and regions have one council and the federal state also has a senate and a central parliament. The proportional representation system, which benefits the Flemish, divided the electorate into French and Dutch speaking groups for the deputies and senators. So in accordance with laws from 1935, the legal system is only permitted to use Dutch in Flanders and French in Wallonia and the German-speaking region. So the Dutch is responsible for Flanders and the French one for Wallonia and the German-speaking cantons and both for Brussels. Also, for example, if the defendant cannot communicate in the court's official language, he or she may accept that the proceeding may be conducted in French, Dutch, or German, or request an interpreter or request that the case be transferred to another province. The same law mandates that two-thirds of the judges in Brussels must be bilingual. So, kailangan talaga bilingual yung judges. Sa Brussels, para naman magkakaintindihan sila kasi minsan talaga meron talaga tayong tao o client na hindi nakakaintindi o hindi marunong magsalita ng lengguwahe na yun. And next we have in 1962 to 1963 laws determine which languages are taught in school. So Wallonia fifth class of primary school, they teach the language of Dutch, English, or German depending on parents' demand. Flanders fifth class of primary school, they teach the language French or English may be taught as a second language. So Flanders, both French and English are taught as a compulsory subject. So English subject is compulsory subject ani siya na time. So next, Bologna Secondary School they teach about Dutch, English, or German taught as a second language, and Brussels Dutch is obligatory for French speakers and vice versa. Starting in the third grade of primary school, it means that in Wallonia, classes in Dutch, English, or German may start in the fifth grade, depending on the parents' choices. So, starting in the fifth grade of primary school, either French or English may be taught as a second language in the Flanders, based on the needs of the parents, while Dutch and English are taught as a second language starting in the first year of secondary school in Wallonia. French and English are both taught as required subject in Flanders. So in Brussels, French speakers are required to learn Dutch beginning in the third grade of elementary school, and vice versa. The school system plays an important role in creating a population of bilingual speakers. So, Bardicci, 2004, he wrote an article about what holds Belgium together is the lack of any valuable alternative. So according to him, what holds Belgium together is the lack of any reasonable alternative, and the speakers of the two main languages only feel a sense of identity with their respective community, and not the nations as a whole, including the respective other community, are two ideas that are increasingly shared today. So the disparity between Belgium's two main languages dominates the country's linguistic, which is ethnic landscape, sparking a variety of political initiative and efforts, which is federal, municipal, or national or local. Wait. Okay, pardon me. This was the slides that I'm talking about the French community, which is in 1990 a decree was passed that recognized the existence of indigenous languages in so-called French community. So this time, the French was the sole language in Wallon school. After the conquest, all parents began raising their children in French. And also the Union Culture Wallonia main organizations that promotes the use of language. So in allow recognizing the existence of indigenous people. Language is the so-called French community, which includes different Wallon dialect, was passed in 1990. And next we have Switzerland. According to 2009 data, the Swiss Confederations consists of 26 territories with a population of 7.6 million. So in Switzerland, they have four main languages, which is German, French, and Italian. So historically, the Swiss people spoke four languages, so which they shared with their neighbors and Romans or Rhaeto-Romance, a distinct Romance language descending from Latin related to French and Italian and so on. This linguistic mix is the result of Confederation's historical expansion. And next we have the historical outline. German was introduced to this region by Germanic peoples who began to expand into the old domains of the Roman Empire in the 5th century. So in 1291 took an oath of eternal allegiance. So for German speaking cantons took an oath of eternal allegiance in 1221. So, a military alliance known as the Swiss League of Feudal Mini-States was formed to prevent Rudolf of Habsburg, the new king of Germany, and his expansionist policies. So its goals is, according to Co. 1978, was to uphold each member state's independence and full sovereign rights. So in 19th century, the expansions of the confederations unaccepted the terms of treaty. And also in 16th century, they developed a military power sufficient to protect itself and its way of life. And also in 17th century, the power state it did not stick to the emerging trend of the advancing power state in the 17th century. And also Switzerland was divided into two religious groups during the Reformation. Due to Switzerland's international neutrality during the 17th century religious conflict in other parts of Europe, including those involving Protestants and Catholicism, the two religions were given equal treatment. Thankfully, linguistic and religious barriers do not overlap, maintaining the unity of Switzerland. So the Swiss Army has had 120,000 active duty personnel since 2003 and 80,000 reservists, down from 400,000 before 2003. So it participates in peacekeeping missions but has not engaged in any foreign war since 1868. So Napoleon's 1798 invasion marked the end of the old confederations, which was dismantled under his time. So after the Swiss refused to fight alongside Napoleon against the advancing Austrian and Russian forces, so forcing Napoleon to negotiate and restore some of the country's autonomy. So a new Swiss entity, the Swiss Republic, was founded in 1803. The European powers agreed to formally recognize Swiss neutrality in 1815 when the Congress of Vienna fully restored Swiss independence. The centralization was eliminated by the new constitutions, a decision that was later undone in the third and final constitution of 1848. And next we have linguistic situations and language fallacies. So all four of the languages are defined as a national language, which is German, French, Italian, and Romansh. So in 1996, Romance was merely national and the other three languages were both national and official. So the Swiss state now recognizes all the four as official languages. As a result, Switzerland stands out as an exception in Europe and has been suggested as a possible role model for the European Union in terms of accommodating multiple official languages. That's according to What's 1991. And also, German made up of approximately 63.7% of the Swiss populations, French 20.4%, Italian 6.5%, and Roman 0.5% declared one of the national language as their primary language. And next we have Switzerland is quadlingual at a national level, and citizens are not multilingual. So despite much internal migrations and the large number of foreigners, most regions are in fact monolingual. So most Swiss do not speak more than one national language. So in the 2000 census, more than half of all Swiss people stated that they were not competent enough to use another Swiss language, despite the fact that the Swiss educational system strives to provide all students with some knowledge of a second national language, even though they were all in school studying one. That's according to Durham 2006. Also, English is a popular choice as a school subject, and it is sometimes used as a lingua franca between speakers of different language communities. So, next we have Romance, a southeast portions of Switzerland since Roman times. So it has Romance has been spokenly continuous parts of Switzerland southeast. So Lia Romancha, established in 1919, is the principal organization in charge of carrying out a program of Romance language maintenance and planning. So Unity in Diversity Switzerland as a model multilingual state. It means that it is complicated matter how the populations of Switzerland views the country's linguistic environment. On the one hand, the pride in unity in diversity is a significant aspect of Swiss identity, and it is generally believed that Switzerland's success as a multilingual nation depends on its population's willingness and desire to act and be governed as an unitary yet multi-ethnic nation. So the rule of English, according to Miller English in Switzerland, so it would have been dreamed completely absurd to think that English could be used in Switzerland. It was widely acknowledged that English was a foreign language, the native language, such as German, French, Italian, and Romance, as well as a second and possibly third national language made up people's language repertoire in the past. And next, this we have so the Second War, and especially after 1960, these situations drastically changed as a result of the worldwide spread of English, according to Darmuller English in Switzerland. So English is present in Switzerland to a degree that has made some citizens worry about true Swiss culture. In 1989 government report was published on the linguistic situations of Switzerland. And next we have the European Union. So several European countries joined together to create a common market trade, which came to be known as the European Union. So the EU has expanded beyond its economic purpose to freedom of movement between people, goods, and services. Now it's an essential political and economic forces in Europe, consisting of 27 member states, with several others in negotiations to join the Union. So a short history of the European Union. So common market, so that's what I mentioned, and also which is including the between created, which is Belgium, Federal Republic of Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, and Northern Netherlands. So to secure the peace and economics, so 1957 is the founding country signed the Treaty of Rome. The Denmark, Ireland, and United Kingdom decided to join. The first enlargement took place in 1973, and also the European citizen directly elect members of parliament. Greece joined the EU in 1981, then Portugal and Spain in 1986. So in 1989, Berlin Wall fell. So October 1990, unifications of Germany and reintroductions of democracy to the countries of Central and Eastern Europe. And also December 1991, the Soviet Union itself collapsed. And also the Treaty on European Union signed in Maastricht in 1991 created the European Union. To 1999 to 2001, single currency was introduced. So government and state leaders gathered in Lisbon in 2007. So the institutions of European Union. So they have four main European Union management and administrative bodies. Consists of the European Commission, which is the executive body divided into numerous departments responsible for policy making in particular domains. Second, we have European Council, the general political directions and priorities of the European Union. And third, we have the European Parliament, which is the legislative and controlling body. And next, we have the last one is we have the Council of the European Union. So European identity. 1974, the first declarations of the European Union, and 1700s and early 1800s, German and Romanticism flourished. And recent immigration issues on the example of the United Kingdom historical outline 1284 England and Wales began to establish the Union and formalize the reign of the King Henry in. And 1603 James of the Scotland inherited the English throne, and that will be all. Thank you.